Now that we've had like a beat to take a look at Apple's new iPhone lineup, there's a lot happening in the iPhone 12 Pro line. In the previous generation, iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max, the only difference was really screen size. But Apple has changed that with the 12 Pro and the 12 Max, putting a significant difference between those phones. So I wanted to compare the brand new iPhone 12 Pro series and the iPhone 11 Pro series, help you figure out which reasons, if any, you might have to pick one of them up. So jumping into the iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max side first, there are 5 really big differences versus the 11 Pro and the 11 Pro Max. This is a new looking phone, which we don't get every year. It also is bringing new colors. So gone is the green from the 11. We now have a new super bright, let's call it Escobar gold. We have kind of a more muted navy blue, though Apple is calling it Pacific blue. The design language is really reminiscent of what I think was one of the most perfectly designed iPhones, the iPhone 5. The displays are also bigger, up from 5.8 and 6.5 on the 11 to 6.1 and 6.7 now on the Big Daddy Pro Max. We have now a ceramic infused display that Apple is making crystals inside of this, which ultimately is going to lead to, at least allegedly, 4 times the drop protection as the iPhone 11 Pro. That's potentially a really big deal. We're gonna talk about that a little bit more. So as you guys are watching, if you've made your mind up to go for the iPhone 12 Pro, but you're not sure to go Pro or Max, go check out the Apple Circle. It's another channel that I run, and host over there, Robert Rosenfeld, did a whole video sort of breaking down differences between those two phones. Tell them in the comments though that you came from John Ford Lakers, and also I'll link to the Apple Circle in the description if you want to go check them out. And interesting with Apple here, they made the Pro Max really the camera king. And they added a lot of features that you can only get in the Pro Max. But if you want to get all that stuff, you got to carry a 6.7-inch phone. Well, for me, I'm all about the bigger phone possible. But for a lot of folks, they may not want that giant size. But I think the whole story about the iPhone 12 comes down to those cameras. All right, so the similarities with the two new Pro models. So they all have 3 sensors, a wide, an ultra wide, and the telephoto, as well as the front-facing camera. So that gives it 4. All 4 of those cameras now are capable of what Apple is calling deep fusion. Think of it as sort of the phone doing on its own what it would do if you were editing in Lightroom. If you're shooting in kind of dim settings, it'll pull out sharpness, it'll darken backgrounds if necessary. It ultimately just results in a more vibrant, bright picture that ordinarily you'd have to get sort of messing with graphs in post-production. The fact that's on all 4 is really impressive, and I think it harkens to the power of the A14 Bionic that's inside of it. So in this generation with the iPhone 12, Apple kind of created, I guess you can call it a new format for pictures. It's Apple Pro RAW. And what it's doing is kind of shooting regular raw image where you have that ability to tweak things in post-production and combining it with Apple's traditional deep fusion. That's giving you kind of this new generation of deep fusion. It's giving Apple the ability to tweak those colors, to tweak the backgrounds. It's giving the sort of computational aspect of the phone all the ability to make those settings on its own, which is just absolutely staggering to actually see it happen. And even if you look at the examples from Apple's keynote, now granted, I wasn't there when these photos were being shot. I don't know if other accessories were being used, but look at this picture. This is a staggering shot to look at. I mean, you can see how the colors are coming off of the screen, the dark and the light. There shouldn't be a shot that a phone can do. And that might be one of the biggest reasons to want to get the 12 Pro, the 12 Pro Max over the 11, which is certainly not a slouch of a camera system on the 11 Pro, but the difference here is really drastic. And both of the 12s also, and to the surprise of nobody, support LiDAR scanners. And LiDAR we saw debut on the 2020 iPad Pros. And those do a lot of interesting things. So there's an argument to be made that Apple's future is augmented reality, and it does room mapping much faster, and it definitely does that. But also what it does on the computational photography side and video side was give you stupid fast autofocus. It's bouncing light and coming back right away. So the LiDAR sensor is also gonna give you 6 times faster autofocus in low light. And also is gonna generally give you better night mode shots too. Not a huge deal, but something to at least bear in mind. This is probably one of, at least for me, one of the least interesting reasons to go with an iPhone 12. I never thought focus was that slow on the iPhone 11 or 11 Pro Max, but LiDAR is here, and presumably it's a play for the future with something coming that has to do with augmented reality from Apple. But the bigger story here, and kind of a head scratcher, was sort of the forking of the phone. The Pro Max really brings the heat and is sort of showing the cutting edge that Apple can do, and is kind of a different camera setup than you have on the regular Pro. So the big difference, perhaps, is the telephoto at 62 millimeters. That's gonna give you a 5 times optical zoom range, which is, really nice. It's over twice what you get on the regular Pro. The wide angle camera also has a new sensor. It's 47% larger, which is gonna give you 87% better performance in low light. And that's a really big deal. A lot of photos people take, you wanna be able to get more light in, not necessarily for just low light shots. That is a giant reason to wanna look at the giant phone on the Pro Max. And you also have something called sensor shift. If you thought that the stabilization was good on the 11 Pro and the Pro Max, which it was, it should be just absolutely off the rails on the 12 Pro Max. You now have stabilization actually inside of the sensor itself. That's gonna give you 5 times more micro adjustments than the iPhone 11 Pro, and also 2-second exposure in low light when you have the phone in handheld and not on a tripod. So the iPhones, I think it's fair to say, are the best cameras at shooting video. And that's true with the iPhone 11 Pro, and that's gotten even better here with the 12. It's shooting 10-bit HDR. It's got 700 million colors, 60 times more colors than before. It's the first camera to record Dolby Vision HDR. It can do 4K at 60 frames per second. I mean, these is a spec list that you've got on sort of flagship cameras that have come out in 2020. The fact that they're on a phone is really staggering. So as we compare all of these phones, there are a ton of differences, but there is one thing that they have in common, is you need a cell network to get the most out of them. And I want to talk a little bit about Ting. I've talked about them for the past several months. Chances are you are at home. You're working from home and not taking advantage of all the gigs of data that you are paying for. And if you're looking to find a network that is reliable, but also is going to save you money, Ting has been an absolutely amazing way to go. So first, they're running off of 2 of the main networks that already exist. So you're getting sort of that reliable LTE signal you'd get from the major carriers at a hugely discounted price. So the best part about Ting, at least for me, and I've switched over my parents, my grandparents, and my mother-in-law over to Ting, and they are saving upwards of $40 each per month. It's not a prepaid service. You're paying for what you are using. So only use a gig of data, that's all that you're paying for. Use 2, 3, whatever it might be. It'll scale to suit you instead of you having to change what you're doing to suit your network. So if this sounds like something that you want to try, and I think you should, go to john.ting.com. When you sign up, you'll get $25 off your first month's bill. And if you're on a family plan, the more lines you bring over, the cheaper your bill will be and the more money you can save. It's MagSafe making a comeback. Not how you know it, how it used to be on the laptops. There's now a ring of magnets on the back, which are awesome for charging. You can charge now at 15 watts, over twice the speed. It will also still work with regular Qi chargers, so don't worry about having to buy something new. But if you do want to buy an Apple first-party charger or third-party charger, it'll connect right to the back. Also gives rise to a bunch of new accessories too, little wallet cases in the back and car mounts. It should make charging a little simpler. I think if you know how to charge an Apple Watch, the little magnetic puck, it's like that, but bigger now for iPhone. The entire iPhone line, so 12s and 12 Pros, are now 5G capable. And whether or not that's a big deal for you, I can't answer. I think when you have a 5G service and it's strong, it's a huge win, but also gives me pause for battery life. Apple's claiming it'll do smart switching, and they'll know when you need 5G and when you don't to go back to LTE. Now I imagine there'll be a way to turn off 5G if you want to, but I also necessarily like relying on Apple software to tell me when I need 5G, sort of taking that control out of my hands. 5G is also a notorious battery drain, so I'm a bit concerned on how battery is going to impact all of these things. So Depending on how you shake it, 5G is either a big positive, perhaps even a negative, and a reason to consider the 11 Pro. There's a lot of things to like about this processor, obviously. And Apple loves to get up on stage and be like, it's our fastest phone ever, look at us. And every time I want to be like, yeah, like, of course it is. We've had a year to make it faster. But the speed stuff aside, at least for now, it's Apple's first foray into really, really small 5 nanometer for mobile processing. It's got 6 cores on the CPU side, 4 cores on the GPU side. The neural engine here has 16 cores, up from 8. Essentially, it's going to do 11 trillion operations per second. And as somebody who can barely walk and make a phone call at the same time, that is a lot of operations per second. Now, I can't say what that's going to mean in your daily use. And obviously the A14 is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the computational side of the photography. And that's a big part of what makes that phone tick. But using like apps and scrolling through YouTube and Twitter and stuff, I think you'd be hard pressed to notice much of a difference with the 13 and the 14. But the reason I'm kind of most excited about the A14 is that presumably it's going to be some version of that chip that'll make its way into Apple's new desktops and laptops that'll be based on their own silicon. You figure if it's going to be good enough for like a MacBook Pro, it should be stupid fast for a phone. So that's all this stuff that makes the 12 Pro and the 12 Max unique, different, and perhaps better than the 11 Pro and Pro Max, but those phones are really good still, and for a lot of people represent perhaps a better phone to get. And the biggest reason I think that you should consider a Pro or a Pro Max, and it's obvious, it's price, right? It's last year's phone, it's cheaper. Apple is still happy to sell you, from their site at least, an iPhone 11, but they cut out the 11 Pro and the Pro Max. And as of my peripheral searching online for what new-ish Pro and Pro Max are going for, it's about a $300 to $400 savings what you can get from the iPhone 12 Pro lineup. And that's a lot of money, especially nowadays when things are maybe not the best. It's a lot of extra money in your pocket. And the big deal with the 12s, like I talked about for a long time, is cameras. But don't think that means the cameras on the 11 Pro and Pro Max are bad. They are outstanding cameras. The video fidelity is absolute baller. The stabilization is amazing. The photos are all some version of good. They might not have newfangled RAW settings inside of it, but still those photos that come out always look amazing. And unless you fancy yourself a mobile videographer, or you want to have a digital SLR-esque ability in your pocket, then you already know you want to go for the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro. You just want good pictures. The iPhone 11 Pro is an awesome way to go. Another interesting thing that might be a positive is lack of 5G. Now, if you're on a good 5G service on the 12 Pro and Pro Max, then great, thumbs up, it's going to work out well for you. It's also going to be a battery drain. And the 11 Pro Max is a battery beast. It's not having to worry about excess battery drain while your phone is on 5G, then coming off 5G, then going back on 5G. Just knowing your phone will easily be able to last you 1 to 1.5 days is a lot of peace of mind. And you get that with the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And I've loved using that device. Aside from all of that, I can't answer the question of which phone you should get. If you have to have the newest, if you're a mobile photographer or you need to have 5G, then yeah, obviously, go for the 12 Pro. But if you don't have to have any of those things, maybe better off saving your money. Get the 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max. You will still have an amazing device that'll work very well for the next few years.